So a report came out, and I think it's important to remain somewhat skeptical of these reports, but for the purpose of today's episode, and Matt Brown from Extra Points has been kind of the leader in reporting on the EA College Football 25 video game. And he is adamant, like, hey, you should be wary of these reports. And so, you know what? I'm going to err on his side of the coin that take every report that this player or that player is not going to participate in the EA College Football 25 video game with a grain of salt. But there was a report from Anwar Richardson, who covers Texas football, that Arch Manning will not appear in College Football 25, the video game. And first of all, the vernacular that he used, he said, quote, "I'm told Arch is focused on playing football on the field." And the resulting responses to that have been objectively hilarious. That the idea that, like, Arch Manning didn't know that, like, hey, you don't actually live inside the PlayStation 5, right? Like, they're not just calling you at all hours of the night for you to come play football in this video game. All you got to do is take 30 seconds, sign a PDF that says you're going to be in the game, and that's all there is to it. But Arch Manning is not your average college football player, and it's easy to lose sight of that because he's not on the field playing a ton at Texas, and yet is still a member of the football royal family. Arch Manning is not. I think the number was 90% of college football players that are eligible to be in the game so far have said, yeah, I have filled out the paperwork, have participated in the necessary requirements to be in the game. 90%, which is awesome, which is great, which is huge, because there was a lot of discussion about whether because the idea is you're going to get $600 and a free copy of the game, which to the overwhelming majority of college football players is awesome. $600 and a free copy of a video game you are probably going to spend $70 to $80 to $100 to buy anyway is cool. That's great. But there was a lot of discussion about, okay, well, this guy might not participate because $600, he thinks he's worth more than $600, yada, yada, yada. So Matt Brown says, be wary of some of the reports that come out about whether or not this guy will not definitively be in the game. But the report is that Arch Manning's not going to be in the game. Arch Manning, maybe more than any other college football player, and I think there's a very small group of college football players like this, that, for instance, Shedeur Sanders is in a similar boat to Arch Manning, where not only are you a college football player, you are a brand. And not only are you a brand, you're an extension of a brand. And that is both a blessing and a curse. It comes with both pros and cons, that Arch Manning is going to someday, whether it's at Texas or whether it's somewhere else, find himself playing on a college football field. And Arch Manning is going to do really well, if he wants to, in the NIL game. He's going to make a lot of money, like Shedeur Sanders makes lots of money being a college football player. One, because Shedeur Sanders is a very good college football player. And two, because the name association, brand recognition with your father being one of the all-time greats. Now, Arch Manning's obviously father isn't one of the all-time greats, but his grandfather was a great college football player and a great NFL player. And two of his uncles, one of them is already in the Hall of Fame, and the other will someday be in the Hall of Fame. So Arch Manning is not your average college football player, because to the other backup quarterbacks at Texas, if they're in EA Sports College Football 25, do they necessarily care if they're a 74 rating? No. They're just happy to be included in the game. Now, you've heard that the game could be used as motivation that Khalil Mack wore 46 in college because that was his NCAA rating the first time out. Khalil Mack can afford to be can afford to be rated 46 overall in a video game. But when you are a brand, when you are bigger than just your name, and I'm not saying that Arch Manning is bigger than Texas Longhorns football or anything of that magnitude, but he is a brand and he has to protect that brand. And whether he recognizes that as a young pup or somebody inside his inner circle or posse or whatever you want to call it, whether they recognize that or not, you have to protect the brand, right? McDonald's, Walmart, Toyota can't afford to have their brand damaged by this thing or that thing, in the same vein that Arch Manning can't afford to be a 71 or 74 overall player in EA Sports College Football, because if that is your rating, and he's not going to be, I would venture to guess, now this is just speculation, that the Madden ratings were always really drastically different than the college football player ratings, where in NCAA 14, right, like you could be a quarterback at Louisiana Monroe and be an 86 to 88 overall, where like Kirk Cousins in Madden is a 82. He's one of the top 15 quarterbacks in the NFL, and you're rated as an 82. I would venture to guess that maybe some of the ratings for College Football 25, the video game, are going to be closer to Madden than they are to NCAA 06 back in the day, where just like if you could run really fast and you played at a Power 5 program, you were 90 overall. I think you're going to be closer to a more Madden style, where in NCAA 14, the second or third string quarterback at Texas still might have been rated as an 82 or an 84 when the starter was a 95. I don't think you're going to get that in College Football 25. And I don't think Arch Manning and the Arch Manning brand and the Manning family as a whole can take the chance that Arch Manning, who is viewed as, depending on the way you look at it, is viewed as another generational talent on one side of the coin, and the other side will say if his name was Arch Smith, he wouldn't have a Power 5 offer. But the same things were said about Peyton Manning when he was coming out of college, was that if his name was Peyton Smith instead of Peyton Manning, he never would be in contention for the number 1 overall pick. And there are people that will tell you that he's the greatest regular season quarterback in NFL history. So you can put all that stuff aside. But when you're a brand, you can't take the chance, especially when you have the ability to make, truthfully, hundreds of thousands of dollars to millions of dollars by partnering with other brands if you're a 74 overall in EA Sports College Football 25. You can't take that chance. You can't take the possibility that something you don't have any control of whatsoever, other than you signed a PDF, sent it back to EA Sports, and said, yep, count me in. You can say that number 16, Arch Manning from New Orleans, Louisiana, is a sophomore quarterback in your game. And after that, you don't have any control over how you are associated with that game, with your rating, with your name, image, and likeness in that space. Arch Manning can't take the chance that the game can damage his reputation, damage his standing, damage his brand. Shedeur Sanders is in the same boat. Can't take the chance. Now, I think Shedeur Sanders probably could, because I think there's a good chance Shedeur Sanders could be on the cover of the game. Now, Arch Manning, as the backup or third string quarterback at Texas, doesn't have the chance to be on the cover of the game. But Shedeur Sanders, and we're all awaiting, who's going to be on the cover, and there are there are ideas of, it should be the players who would have been on the cover the decade that the game didn't exist, and etc. But if they go with a current player, Shedeur Sanders has a really great chance to be on the cover. So he has a little bit different motivation, a little bit different reasoning to either step into the game or not step into the game. But for Arch Manning, somebody who has to be hyper focused and aware of the perception around not only him, the program that he goes to, what it really is sort of like a political family. It's sort of like a political dynasty, right? Where, my dad was this, it's almost like being part of the Kennedys, where everything you do is going to be hyper fixated upon because of the lineage that you come from. And so you can't, like, if Arch Manning wanted to say, like, hey, I want to transfer to Tulane, I want to transfer to Louisiana Monroe, Louisiana Tech, some group of 5 school, I don't know that he can do that because of the brand, because of the association that your name carries, and the quality and the expectations that come with having that last name. Again, both a blessing and a curse. He's lived a really great, probably privileged, exciting life that nobody else can relate to other than him. But along with that comes some negatives. And one of the negatives is you have to worry about things that nobody else in the quarterback room at Texas has to worry about. There is a pressure there. There is an expectation there because of that last name. And the people around him are probably telling him, hey, you just can't afford to potentially not be highly rated and let that damage some of your earning potential in the future for the next year. Because at the end of the day, and maybe some of those brand partnerships, the sponsors, the potential NIL deals that come for Arch Manning, maybe they don't care that just having that association with the Manning name is good enough for them. But at a time in at a time in advertising where everybody is worried about getting their bang for their buck, yada, 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 can you afford to do a $250,000 NIL deal with a 74 overall quarterback, or 71, 72, 77 even? No, you can't. So Arch Manning is not your average college football player. He can't just sit back and sign the PDF that EA Sports sends him to say, yep, I'm in. He's got to weigh a lot more than that. And if it comes out ultimately that he's not in the game, does that suck? Yeah, because I want to see everybody in the game. I want to see the college kids get their $600 and a free copy of the game. I want the biggest and best players, names, brands, etc. in the game. But I also don't envy Arch Manning because he's in a different spot than everybody else is. And it's one of those times where it's the downside of being in a spot that nobody else is in. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content that we're pumping out here on Saturday Glory. If you're listening on a podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. Be back at it tomorrow. I'll see you then here on the Daily Huddle, Saturday Glory.